Buon pomeriggio a tutti.
Good
Scusate il
afternoon,
ritardo,
everybody.
ma oggi avevamo
Apologies
il
for the
nostro ultimo
delay,
consiglio
but we had
d'amministrazione di
our
questo
final
consigliatura e quindi
board
avevamo una
meeting
serie
of
di
this
documenti
current board,
da
and therefore we
approvare
had a
entro
number
la
of
fine mandato
documents
e è
which
stata
we
un
had to
po' più
approve
lunga del
before the end of the
solito.
mandate, and therefore the meeting was longer than
Siamo
expected.
qua, quindi in
But
orario
here we
rispetto
are,
al ritardo che
on
avevamo
time
dichiarato.
compared to the
Bene,
delay that
come
we
di
had warned you
consueto
about.
facciamo la nostra
So, as
presentazione
usual, we will
riguardo
be
ai risultati
going through our
annuali, la faremo con
presentation
una certa
on the year's
velocità per
results.
lasciare
We'll
a
be
voi
speeding things up
spazio finale
to
per
allow
le
you
domande.
to have some time
Quindi
for questions.
partiamo con la nostra
Let's
presentazione
begin with our
e
presentation
partiamo dal risultato netto che
with the
come avevamo anticipato è
net
in crescita
results,
di circa
which,
il
as we
4%,
had
quindi in
mentioned, was up
quanto ci
4%,
eravamo detti
in line
con
with what
il
we had said
forecast del 2025
when we
e
gave you a forecast on
un
2025.
risultato che diciamo
And it
riesce
is a
perfettamente
result
con
which
il
is
nostro percorso definito nel piano
bang in
industriale.
line with what we
Bene
have defined in the
anche
business plan.
la leva finanziaria,
Uh,
chiudiamo
the
sotto i
financial
2,6
lever
come
is
avevamo
doing fine. We're
promesso
below
e
2.6
il
times as promised.
2,57 è
Uh,
diciamo il valore finale del
2.57 times is
bilancio
the
e quindi
final
confermiamo la
figure,
nostra
uh,
bassa leva e
which
quindi anche la
confirms
nostra
our
capacità
low
di affrontare
leverage and our
momenti
ability
complessi ma
to
anche
deal with
poi opportunità
complex
sul mercato
moments, but
come
also to
avevamo
take
già
advantage of
discusso
opportunities on the market, as we had said
precedentemente. Stiamo adesso a
during our business
vedere
plan presentation.
quali sono
Now,
stati
moving on
poi
to
le determinanti
the
principali
main
EBITDA
EBITDA
che
elements.
sconta una
The
riduzione
EBITDA, of
temporanea
course, had
quasi
to
di circa
take into
114
account a
milioni
reduction in temporary opportunities
relativamente
worth
alle opere
114
in
million, for the
stanza, poi
most part
vedremo
linked
in
to the
dettaglio
last
successivamente.
instance markets, but we'll be seeing
Siamo
the details later.
ormai diciamo nella fase discendente
We
di
are
delle
in
contribuzioni
the
in stanza,
final
più di 100
tail
milioni li
of the
avevamo
last instant market
recoverati l'anno
contribution. We had already
scorso,
recovered over
altri
100 million last year.
120,
A
114
further
li
114
stiamo
million
compensando con questi
are being
risultati
offset
e quindi
thanks to these
abbiamo l'ultima
results.
fetta da
We're
fare
just
per
left with
il
the final
2026
piece to be
circa la
accomplished in
metà
2026,
di questa
which is
dimensione.
roughly half that
Andiamo a
amount.
vedere poi partendo da questa
Um,
riduzione cosa ha
and beginning
contribuito
from this
alla
reduction,
crescita
let's see what
passi
contributed
da
to
1
growth
miliardo 474 che è il
from
valore al
1.474
2024
billion,
al netto
which
delle
is the
sconto
homogeneous
per le
figure
opportunities
compared to
a
2024, uh,
1537
except for
con
these
una
temporary
crescita
opportunities, up to
strutturale del
1.537
3% su
billion,
questi
with a
business
structural growth worth 3% in our
partiamo
traditional
diciamo da
businesses.
un elemento che è un one-off
Let's
tariffario.
begin
Sapete che
with a
nel
tariff one-off element.
2025
As you know, in
abbiamo avuto
2025,
alcuni
we were able to
interventi per quanto
take
riguarda il
advantage
settore
of a
delle
number of
reti, in
interventions in the
particolare
network
sull'energia
sector,
elettrica e il gas,
especially on electricity and
che
gas,
superavano
uh,
ritardi
which
di
allowed us
costi non
to
riconosciuti
recover
del
the
passato e
delays of
questo
costs which hadn't been
ha
recognized in the past,
consistente
and that gave us a
nel
sizable contribution to
2025.
the
Sulla parte
2025
dell'energy
results.
abbiamo un
As far as energy is
segmento
concerned, we have a,
indifferente
a
di
minus
7
sign. We'll be
milioni
going into that.
e capiremo dopo in dettaglio
Minus
perché.
17 million, and later we'll be
Le
seeing the
reti
details of that.
hanno avuto
Networks
un buon percorso di crescita
had a
basato
good
sulla
growth
crescita
performance
della RAB,
based
sulla
on the growth of
modernizzazione,
RAB,
ma
on the
andando anche a
recovery of
compensare la
inflation, but
diminuzione
we were
del
also
WACC
able to offset
che
the
c'è stata
decrease in
nel
WACC,
corso del
which
2025
took
sul
place
mondo dell'energia
in
elettrica, della trasmissione
2025
elettrica e sul mondo della
in
distribuzione
electricity
gas
distribution and
e
in
nel
gas
waste
distribution. The
che
waste
ha
business went
compensato
well.
un minor contributo
It
derivante
offset
dall'energia
a lower
elettrica
contribution stemming from
fatto l'anno
electricity,
scorso
given the
a prezzi
fixing
ancora
activity
elevati
we had
e che quindi
focused on last year at high prices. And despite
un
that,
segno più
we were
nel
still able to
vedere gli altri
have
business
a
quasi
positive
positivi.
contribution. And the other
Se
businesses
guardiamo la nostra
also
torta di
are up 4
distribuzione,
million.
vediamo
Now, if we
come
look at the
torniamo a
distribution
un
pie,
maggiore
at the
equilibrio
mix,
fra i tre
you'll see that
business
we have a greater
e
balance
quindi
between the
siamo
three
in linea
businesses,
con gli obiettivi che ci eravamo
meaning
posti
that we are in line with the goals we had
di
set in the business
equilibrare il
plan,
contributo dei nostri tre
namely
business.
to have a
L'energy
more balanced
circa il
approach in our
44
three
e
businesses. Energy is down from
le
42% to
reti passate dal
35.
32 al
Networks
33
are
e il
up to
waste dal
38% from
23 al 22.
32%, and waste
Quindi il
goes up from
portafoglio
23 to
ormai
24%. So the
perfettamente
portfolio is
equilibrato.
fully
Andiamo
balanced
adesso
at this
a
point.
comprendere, a
Now,
fronte di una diminuzione dell'EBITDA di circa
given
50
the
milioni,
size of the EBITDA,
come
which is roughly 50 million, Uh,
siamo riusciti a chiudere
let's
con un
see how we
margine
were able
netto
to
in
come up with a
crescita rispetto all'anno
growing net
precedente
profit compared to the previous year,
di circa 17 milioni.
up by some 17
Partiamo
million.
dal mondo
Let's begin with
degli ammortamenti
provisions,
vediamo come la
and
parte
you can
degli
see that
ammortamenti e degli accantonamenti si chiude con
provisions
un valore di 592
have a
20
value worth
milioni in più
592 million, which is
rispetto
up 30
all'anno
million
scorso,
compared to last year.
valore che è legato
Uh,
alla crescita che abbiamo
this is a
fatto
figure linked to the
all'interno degli
growth we
investimenti
posted
negli
in
ultimi
terms
anni
of
e che
investments made in recent
continua
years,
dal punto di vista
uh,
degli
and that is
ammortamenti,
a
ma che è stato
carryover in
chiaramente
terms of
compensato dal decalage delle unità,
depreciation,
diciamo,
but
di
it was
accantonamento, fondo svalutazione crediti, dei vari accantonamenti,
offset by the
che è passato
provisions,
da
which went from
195 a
195 to
143, con
143,
una diminuzione di 52 milioni
with
di
a
euro,
52 million euro
che
reduction,
ci porta a un EBIT di 803.
leading to an EBIT
L'altro,
worth 100,
diciamo, beneficio
803 million.
consistente lo abbiamo
The
avuto
other major
nella
benefit
normalizzazione
comes from the normalization
finanziaria,
on the
che
financial side of
prosegue un
things,
percorso fatto già
uh, which is
nell'anno
in line with what we had already
2024,
started doing in
dato del
2024
2023, quindi
compared to 2023.
102% a
We had gone from
143
200 to
e oggi
142, um,
consuntiviamo un
whereas
risultato di
we now
192
stand
milioni
at a result
complessivi.
of
È chiaro
92
che questi
million
risultati
euros.
sono legati a
These results
ottimizzazione
are
che abbiamo
obviously linked
fatto,
to
ma anche il
optimization
fatto che
efforts,
214 milioni
but
di
also
maggiore
consider that the
contributo di marginalità
114 million
si portavano dietro
less
anche
contribution of margins
accantonamenti e
were
costi
also linked
finanziari,
to
limitazione
depreciation,
di
amortization, and
ammortizzazione dei
provisions,
crediti, ci
and
portano
therefore the
a
reduction of these
valorizzare che
elements
la crescita
allow
appunto
us to
strutturale che abbiamo
give
fatto
value to
sugli
the
ultimi
structural
anni si
growth that we
trasferisce in
had
fondo
in
sull'ultima riga. Sulle
EBIT,
tasse
which
abbiamo
goes down to
avuto
the
il
bottom line.
beneficio
In
del
taxes,
tax rate
we
di circa
were
mezzo
able to have a
punto,
tax rate
quindi
benefit
questo ci
worth
porta
zero point
a
0.5,
un livello di
worth half a point.
tasse che è di
We
poco
now have a
superiore a quello dell'anno
tax rate
scorso,
which is slightly above the one we
partendo
had
dalla
last year,
situazione pre-tax
despite
attuale
starting from a higher
e il
pre-tax
contributo dei
condition,
minorities
and the
che è
contribution of
cresciuto
minorities
in linea
went
con
up slightly, although it is in
la
line with
variabile del
the
risultato
previous year's
rappresentativa.
figures,
Quindi
which brings us to
stiamo
our
diciamo,
number, which is
lavorando proprio
464
per
million. Um,
continuare sia
as you can see,
l'attuazione
we
sia
are
lato crescita
working to increase
organica
efficiency, to
per
boost
continuare a
organic growth,
confermare quel track
so
record
that we can
positivo
continue to
di
confirm the positive track record in
che
terms
stiamo
of net
affrontando
profit, which was
negli anni passati e
our
anche in
commitment
questo anno.
in the more recent period
Adesso,
and for the business plan too.
dicevo, siamo arrivati tardi
Um,
perché questo
we
è il
are
finale
running
del
a
corso
little
di
late because
amministrazione, quindi
this was our
significa
final board
che sono
meeting
passati tre
for
anni
this mandate, which means that
che
3 years have passed
ci hanno visto affrontare uno
during
scenario
which
sempre
we had to face
complesso su elementi
an
di
always
complessità
complex scenario
diversificati in questo
with
periodo, ma
diverse
uno
levels
scenario
of
dove
complexity
siamo
over the period.
riusciti a dare un
Uh,
ritorno
but
agli
despite that,
azionisti
despite the
di
scenario,
circa
we were able to give a
di circa
uh,
77%
cumulative return to
e
investors worth
sostenute
77% over the
delle
3-year period,
yield
which was supported
che
by a
circa il
dividend yield, which is
5%
roughly
e
5%,
nonostante un incremento continuo
despite a constant
del prezzo
increase
dell'azione
in the
da
value of our stock,
16-17%
which
all'anno ogni
stands at
anno,
around 16,
quindi
17%
complessivamente
each year.
77%
So all in all,
e l'ultimo
77%,
anno
and only in the
abbiamo
last year,
total shareholder return
we had a
del
total
22%.
shareholder return equal to
Questa
22%.
continuità in questo
Now, this
contesto
continuity
è di nuovo la
in this
prova
context
del fatto che
is once
il
more
nostro approccio
proof of the
multi-business, la
fact that our
capacità che abbiamo nella gestione del
multi-business approach
business è
to the way we manage things
finalizzato a
uh,
mantenere molto
is
limitati
focused
gli
on
impatti
limiting the
esterni
impact
sul
of
nostro
external
modello.
macros uh,
Andiamo a vedere un altro
on our
capitolo
numbers.
importante che
Now,
è quello della
another important
sostenibilità.
item to us is
Sapete che
sustainability.
noi misuriamo
As you know,
con un indicatore aggregato
we
il
have an
contributo
aggregate
al nostro EBITDA
way
di quelle
to
attività che oltre che fare
understand
valore economico
the
portano
contribution of those
anche
activities,
benefici rispetto ai
which
target di
give
sviluppo
us
sostenibile
economic
definiti dalle
benefits,
Nazioni Unite,
but also
dove
give
che
us
abbiamo iniziato questa rilevazione nel
sustainable benefits
2016,
as defined by the UN.
il
We began
33%
these
di
reports in
noi era
2016. At the time, 33% of EBITDA
condiviso
uh,
oggi siamo arrivati al
was
60%
shared
con un
value. We
valore
currently
che è
stand at
raggiunto
60%
916
with a
milioni
value which is up to 916 million, which
in
means it
questi
grew
10
three
anni
fold over the past 10 years, in which we've been monitoring shared value with a 13% average growth each year. As far as taxonomy is concerned, we currently stand at 63% of our investments, which are in line with taxonomy. Moving on to the business areas. Let's take a look at EBITDA dynamics in the energy supply sector. Dynamics which began with the decline in temporary opportunities. 80% of our contribution is linked to last resort markets. Further 20% is linked to the final part of the super eco bonus that we also had in 2024. And the expiry of the extraordinary margins we had in the business. We were re-awarded the Salvaguardia tender with much lower margins, and in the final part of the year, we were reconfirmed in the default market, although we left the FUI market, because from our point of view, that the price levels there meant that that sector was no longer an opportunity. Last year, we began with the STG market in the second part of the year. This year, we also included the first part, which means we had a negative contribution worth 25 million. We also had another margin normalization during the energy crisis in 2023. We had made a bid in the concept tenders that we were awarded. We're very proud of that. Those margins can no longer be replicated in a normalized context, which eroded 10 million euros in margins in those tenders. But again, it goes back to the normalization of margins that we are witnessing as we leave the energy crisis behind. The energy services are doing very well, as are the value-added services, which we offer to our clients, both as a way of increasing the services portfolio we sell to our customers, but also as a way of allowing them to decarbonize and in saving money. This is a very positive item. And we also had a positive contribution from public lighting, a business we're continuing to grow in. And then with the other businesses, we have some activities in our customer base that allowed us to offset the growth of costs with a benefit worth 2 million euros, if you consider some small benefits in terms of our productive assets, which brings us to a grand total of 540 million. Our customer base declined to 4.4 million, which is in line with what we had forecasted in our business plan, a decline which can be explained by the lower number of supply points in the last instance markets, in the concept market, and with the normal reduction in STG customers. Let me now give the floor to our CEO for a focus on waste and networks. Thank you, Christian, and good afternoon. Before we look at the 2025 results, let me just confirm the fact that, as we said last week, we finalized the closing of the Hera Group transaction, which means that we are the market leaders in the civilian and industrial wastewater sector. We are broadening our services to support the Italian industry. And we're seeing some very positive demand dynamics on the market. And along with that, we are constantly looking for new ways forward that can support us in consolidating the exciting story of this business. Now, as you can see on page 10, we have a summary of the growth we posted thanks to the contribution of all of our business activities, including the regulated ones. This is a growth which is even more valuable, given the fact that the macro scenario we operate in is especially challenging, or and it was especially challenging in 2025, which once again goes to show that our waste division is especially resilient. The growth is driven by all of our activities, and it is a growth which was able to more than offset the reduction in extraordinary energy revenues, as Christian was saying earlier, minus 29 million, as you can see from the first column, following the fixing set in an energy context with high prices due to the previous energy crisis, which dates back to 2022. If we look to the various businesses which contributed to growth, you can notice that collection finally has a positive results, which means that the goodwill, the initial part of the new collection activities is over, and we can now manage our activities more efficiently, and we can broaden the services we offer. Moving on to the recycling business, it is up by 10 million. We have the Aliplast company, thanks to which we are the undisputed leaders in the secondary raw materials and top of the range raw materials. We can intercept demand, and the growth factors are due to volumes, but also due to the improvement in margins. We were able to buy waste better, and we sold the secondary raw material better. Waste treatment is up 16 million, with a good performance in our waste to energies. They performed better than last year. There was a higher level of productivity and a better waste mix. This is something we often discuss with you. Even when we illustrated the business plan, we spoke about our ability to optimize the thermal saturation of our plants. This worked well in 2025, and the rest is linked to the price effect on waste, especially on urban special waste. Then we also have soil remediation, a business which is also on the rise. It is up 5 million. We are market leaders in this segment. This growth in margins is linked to the most recent acquisition we made of the ACR Reggiani company, which we acquired some 3 years ago, which allowed us to consolidate our leadership in the soil remediation sector, a market with a major backlog. And thanks to ACR, we can use a killer application, our global waste management approach, allowing us to increase the loyalty of our customers with a number of end-to-end activities. We support them in their production. We select, recycle, and give value to their waste along the lines with what we do with Fincantieri and other companies operating in sectors such as the oil and gas one. And M&A also has a growth worth 4 million, and that is linked to the Ambiente Energia and TESR platforms, which we made the acquisition of at the beginning of last year, which are now fully a part of our perimeter. And then finally, volumes, which stand on the same level of last year, although the mix has changed a little bit. The regulated urban waste collection was slightly down, but as you know, there is no impact on margins here because tariffs were linked to costs for the most part. And this allowed us to use our treatment capacity at 100% with a focus on special waste, which have a much higher margin. These are all structural and solid growth drivers. They are resilient, and even despite the macro variables we are currently seeing, allow us to have a healthy and positive dynamic when it comes to dealing with the Italian market demands, which, as you know, is especially profitable. Moving on to networks, we posted a sizable growth here, which is supported by a number of positive and non-recurrent components. As you can see in the first white column, which we isolated here, also as a way of underlining the structural parts of the growth, which supported the results posted by all of our networks. As Christian was saying earlier, we were able to more than offset the decrease in WACC on gas and electricity decided by the authority for 2025. We always say that water networks play the lion's share. They are up 19 million. Also after the development capex, and also with the premiums you obtained for 2022 and 2023, which confirms our leadership in the quality of service, both in contractual terms and from the technical standpoint. Our gas and electricity distribution networks posted over 10 million euros combined, also given the investments and the inflation review, along with our focus on efficiency, allowing us to obtain results which are always more than the previous years. On the group level, we posted a record in investments. We were above 1 billion euros. With our regulated asset base, which, as you can see, is close to 4 billion, with a very good execution of our investments, which we also discussed a few weeks ago during our business plan presentation. So we're very pleased to note that both in networks and in waste, we posted a solid growth in our results. Thank you. And let me now give the floor to Massimo Vai. Good afternoon, everybody. Let's just comment the slide which summarizes the cash generation in 2025 with all of its main components. As you can see, this year, our net financial position is pretty much in line with last year's. In fact, it's slightly better. This was possible despite a significant growth in the investments we made, as our CEO was mentioning, and despite a growth in our dividends, which is consistent with the dividend plan that we illustrated during the business plan. This was all thanks to the great cash generation that we illustrated all the way to the month of September. But even though the final portion of the year, it contributed positively. We have an operating cash flow on the left, which is above 1.3 billion. So it's almost 200 million euros more than the figures we had in 2024. And compared to the numbers of September, it adds a further 400 million. Net working capital. In the previous year and 2 years ago, it had absorbed cash, whereas at this time, it grows by almost 80 million euros. Then we have 59 million euros worth of provisions. Then we have the two capex components, the investments, both on maintenance, which is worth 592 million, which you can see before the free cash flow, and the development capex, which is worth 436 million, which combined absorb 1.28 billion. The free cash flow is worth 761 million, almost twice what we had in 2024. We then have the dividends. I already commented development capex. Then we have a small M&A component, which we financed, which leaves us with a reduction in debt compared to January 1st, worth 19 million. This was a very positive result, allowing us to keep our net financial position below 4 billion. On a number of occasions, you asked me for my expectation as to the evolution of debt and the free cash flow of the net working capital. I always said that it's complex for a company like ours to give you a forecast of the net working capital and of the net financial position. And I had mentioned 4 4.1 billion with a certain error margin. And in fact, we were able to perform better than what our forecasts were, in line with the expectations we had mentioned as a forecast in January. Which means that, as the executive chairman was saying earlier, we can have a net debt to EBITDA ratio which stands below 2.6 times, which means it is in line with 24 and the previous year. So this is a way of supporting the growth that we posted in 2025 and the one we forecast for the business plan years, while maintaining a high level of flexibility, allowing us to seize any opportunity and to be sufficiently resilient vis-a-vis the market volatility, which over the past month we have been experiencing. And therefore we feel we are able to deal with these events with the right degree of financial solidity and flexibility. Moving on to the following slide, to give you a summary of our ratings, interest rates, and the cost of debt. On the left-hand side, you will see the news following the improvement of the sovereign rating, which isn't automatic, but also thanks to our financial performance, we received an upgrade from Moody's. We are now Baa1, up compared to last year. As far as the pie chart of our debt is concerned, 93% of our structured debt, slightly lower than 5 billion, 93% of that is has a fixed rate. As you know, on average, we replace 10% of that amount every year with a market emission, and we use bank debts and a more flexible way of using our financial counterparts to support us every day in our activities. That is worth some 20%, 13% of which is linked to the EIB, 7% to other banks, whereas 80% is given us by the bond market. As far as the cost of debt is concerned, our challenge was to try to limit the growth trend of our group's structured debt in a context in which interest rates are on the rise. Over the years, we have been giving back bonds which have a lower debt compared to the one we would obtain now. Therefore, our challenge is to slow down and to limit the cost of debt, so flexibility and so shorter durations, to slow this growth down and to continue to have a good contribution in the lower lines, as we saw in closing 2025. And one of your questions would certainly be that currently, as a way of managing the market's volatility and to deal with the potential increase in the cost of raw materials, besides the great closing of our net financial position, which gives us a large amount of cash, much higher than what our expectations were a few months ago, just a benefit that we can take advantage of in 2026. Along that, we have over 1 billion in revolving committed lines and 800 million in non-committed lines with our financial counterparts that I was able to meet in recent weeks. And they have guaranteed wonderful support for any further needs we may have. So from this point of view, we are well equipped and with a great support from our counterparts who believe in our group's solidity, which they saw in 2022. Therefore, they know that our growth journey can be guaranteed by an adequate and balanced financial support. I'll leave it at that, and I'll give the floor back to the executive chairman for some conclusions.
Bene.
Great.
Abbiamo impiegato la solita mezz'oretta per fare una rapida carrellata dei risultati del 2025, alcune sottolineature.
We took the usual 30 minutes to give you an overview of 2025. Before we open up the floor for some questions, let's just focus on some of the things we saw in the presentation. We have a high double-digit TSR. 22% is the result of the closing figures of 2025. As promised during the business plan presentation, today's board meeting will propose to the Assembly a dividend worth 16 cents, with a 6.7% growth compared to the dividend we paid in 2025, and with a debt level which is very low. In fact, lower than the one we had in 2025. So with a leverage which stands at 2.57 times. We began well with our M&A activities. We concluded the Sostelia acquisition, as Orazio said earlier, in the waste sector. We concluded that transaction in recent weeks. We also have 52% of the SEA company. We used to have a 31% stake in that company, which means that we will be consolidating this commercial and plant platform in the Marche region to broaden the scope of our activities in the waste treatment business and in our global waste management services. So we're off to a good start in 2026 with the M&A that, as you may remember, we had included in our business plan and which we are working to complete over time. Wonderful. Let me open the floor for some questions now to see to continue with our discussion for the next 30 minutes. Unfortunately, we cannot give the floor to some of the speakers. The first question will be given to Javier Suarez, Mediobanca, but we have a technical issue. We can't seem to hear our participants for the time being. So just bear with us for a few minutes. Well, here we are. Good afternoon, and thank you for the time. The first question I have is on the macro context. I'm sure you trained hard in 2022, and in 2026 we are once again facing a geopolitical crisis which has an impact on the price of commodities. What kind of an impact will this have on the supply business? What impact will it have on your hedging strategy, on your commercial policies, and on your dynamics? We may be entering a scenario in which the geopolitical volatility will be more structural than what we had imagined last year. So that was the first question. I'm very interested in hearing how the company will have to adjust its commercial policies to adjust to this more volatile geopolitical context. Second question. On the first page of your presentation, you mentioned a certain balance sheet headroom, which is quite obvious. And can you give us an update on your discussions, your proactive approach to M&A, which is very much a part of your DNA. You've done a lot, but can you give us a qualitative comment of the actual amounts and what opportunities Hera has to grow in a non-organic way? Can you give us an update, given the context, on any ongoing conversations to increase your stake in Hera Ambiente? And the third question is more on your business. In your slides, you mentioned a normalization of provisions and a significant improvement in financial costs for financial management. Now, these numbers, the numbers we're seeing in 2025 for provisions, is that a level that you think is recurring for the upcoming years, 26, 27, and 28? And in financial management, where you mentioned a reduction, Do the figures in 2025 already take into account the financial improvements, which are low-hanging fruit, or do you still see the possibility of further increasing efficiencies? Thank you. Good afternoon, Javier, and thank you for your questions. Let's begin with the energy context. Well, the answer to your question, in other words, if we are changing our commercial policies, well, we aren't. In fact, the instruments we had activated before the energy crisis in 22 and the ones we implemented in 22 and 23 are the same tools we're still using. So on February 28th, when the war broke out in the Persian Gulf, we asked ourselves the same question, basically. We went over all the things we had already done and which we were still doing, just to understand if there were other things we could do. And all we got was positive confirmations from this point of view. As you know, we are very focused on hedging for all of our businesses. We have plenty of offers on the market, including fixed price offers, which cover all of our hedging costs. Think of our hybrid offer, which has a variable offer through which we can modulate. So things are good for the time being. The fixed part of our price is 15% of all of our volumes are all hedged, so there are no criticalities when it comes to the balance sheet or the P&L. Of course, we're not especially, there may be some changes, but we're not especially concerned for the time being. We're looking closely at the supply policies. We're looking at any potential opportunities there may be. So that covers margins. As far as provisions are concerned, we feel we can further improve during 2026. Also, given the normalization of the last instance market contribution. So this will certainly be one of the themes we'll be seeing in 2026. As far as the optimization of financial costs are concerned, well, we did a great job so far. We significantly optimized costs, and as far as the future is concerned, what Massimo was saying earlier, that is that as we replace the debt, which currently has an average interest rate of 2.8%, replacing that with new debt, we'll have to see what elements we'll be seeing on the market in future years as far as interest rates are concerned. For the time being, in the business plan, we have embedded a growth in this component. Also, given the fact that in future years, some of the benefits we have on that item may expire, and therefore we had already expected a growth of that, but it's already been included in the business plan, so it's nothing new. As far as M&A is concerned, we are working to complete the efficiency and integration of Sestelia. You know that we made the acquisition of a group which had been created recently, so it's an aggregate of a number of companies. So over the next few months, we will be implementing a number of projects that we had already set in the acquisition plan to extract further efficiencies, besides optimizing margins through our cross-selling activities for customers, with a focus on internal efficiencies with other businesses we have. As you know, the company I'm referring to is at a crossroads between civil wastewater treatment and industrial waste liquids coming from companies operating on that territory. So given the fact that they are at this crossroads of sorts, we can optimize things on the purification side of things. As you know, Sustela used to be our supplier of ours, so we're already working on some businesses together. So again, that is one of the focuses we have currently. Plus, we also want to allow the SEA company to grow. We have to build a new plant with them, and therefore we will try to speed that development activity up a bit. Our conversations on M&A are ongoing, as you know. It's very time-consuming. It's tough. In recent days, we focused on closing the financial year, but Orazio and I talk every week, and there are plenty of opportunities that we can look at. I won't give you any further details. As you know, we only share information when we close the opportunities for obvious reasons, given uncertainties and given the negotiations which there may be. Therefore, we won't give anything away. Thank you very much.
La prossima domanda è di
We have
Emanuele Oggioni di Kepler
a question from
Cheuvreux.
Emanuele Oggioni,
Prego,
Kepler
Emanuele.
Cheuvreux.
Buonasera,
Non
mi
so se
sentite
Emanuele-
ora?
I hope you
sì.
can hear me. I hope you can hear me.
Perfetto, grazie. Grazie per la presentazione.
Thank you for the
Ho due
presentation.
domande. La prima è
I
riferita
also have a few
alla,
questions.
outlook
My first
2026.
question is on the outlook for
Concentrarci ovviamente a livello
2026.
qualitativo come sempre.
In
Le
qualitative terms,
valutazioni
can you give us
sui moving parts
an
delle
outlook on
varie
the
business
moving
unit,
parts and the various business units?
quindi un recap di quello che ci
A
dobbiamo
recap,
aspettare
basically,
nel
of what we should
2026
expect in
in termini di
2026
EBITDA,
as
ma
far
anche in
as
termini, diciamo,
EBITDA is concerned,
net working capital
but
e
also
debito
regarding net
netto,
working capital and net debt.
anche siete confident con ad esempio la stima
Are
attuale
you confident with the current consensus, with the current forecast?
immaginando una situazione non che
Of
duri in
course,
termini di energy crisis, poi ovviamente se sarà così ci
with
sarebbe
an energy crisis
uno
which
scenario diverso
won't last very long.
eventualmente
If
temporaneamente più
it,
generativo.
of course, does last
Questo per la prima
for a long time, then of
domanda
course
sul
we may be
2026.
facing a different and
Sulla
worse scenario.
seconda
So that
domanda
was the
sul
first
gas
question on
procurement,
2026. Second question on
voi non
gas
avete,
procurement.
mi sembra, una esposizione diretta come la maggior parte degli
You're not directly
italiani, non avete una
exposed
esposizione diretta
as
al
other Italian
fornitore
peers. You're not
da
directly
Qatar o dal
exposed to
Middle East in generale,
supplies from
però
Qatar
probabilmente ce l'hanno
or the
i
Middle East in general.
vostri
Although, of
fornitori
course, your suppliers,
italiani, perlomeno
your
in
Italian
parte,
suppliers
ovviamente
are
non
exposed, at least
10% del totale.
partly,
E che vorrei capire, in caso invece
some
in
10 or
questo caso
20%.
estremo, ipotizziamo uno scenario estremo di force majeure,
And let's just
sul
imagine
gas,
an
anche
extreme
da parte
scenario,
del
a
vostro
force
fornitore,
majeure
in parte
scenario
di uno di alcuni dei vostri fornitori. A quel punto lì, a livello
for some of
contrattuale,
your gas suppliers.
cosa succede? Quali
From the
implicazioni ci
contractual
possono creare,
standpoint,
visto
what
che siamo una
implications would
catena
Hera have to face
di supplier a monte,
since
diciamo, e poi però
you
voi avete a valle con il
are part
cliente,
of
avete
a
comunque stipulato un contratto
chain of
di
suppliers uphill,
fornitura. Ecco, quindi se ci ricorda anche
and you
l'aspetto
have signed a supply contract
contrattuale e legale di questo partner.
customers. So,
E
what
poi
implications would there be
invece
legally and in
per
terms
quanto
of your
riguarda
contracts?
l'energy supply, se
And then a question on energy
potete darci
supply.
qui
Can you
anche
give
ancora
us
una volta sempre un update sulla situazione
an
di
update
mercato in termini di competizione, in termini
on
di anche
the market,
migrazione
on competition,
dell'STG dei clienti
on
verso tipi
the
di libero
migration of
mercato, che
STG
magari
customers on the market?
può essere un'occasione da sfruttare questa volatilità, questa crescita dei
This
prezzi
volatility may be an opportunity.
per agevolare, diciamo, questo passaggio nel libero mercato, eccetera, e quindi come potreste sfruttare positivamente anche a livello commerciale questa situazione. Infine, un'ultimissima domanda su Waste to Energy, visto che avete avuto un contributo negativo, un declino di 29 milioni di euro di contributo year on year di EBITDA per via dei minori prezzi realizzati. Qual è invece in base a pledging che in
what
parte
is
abbiamo già fatto e
the
altre volte
contribution to
invece
EBITDA?
i prezzi wholesale sono chiaramente
What
superiori
hedging have you done?
perlomeno
The
in questo
wholesale prices are higher year on year for the time being, and therefore,
netto
what is the
potreste avere nel
potential net benefit you may be
2026
seeing in 2026 in your waste to energy plans?
Bene, grazie Emanuele per le domande.
Thank you, Manuel, for all of your questions.
Chiuso in una domanda, 3-4 domande comunque.
Some of which have 3 or 4 questions within them. Now, what will be happening in 2026 as far as the moving parts are concerned compared to 2025? Well, let's begin with all of the growth elements. Well, the M&A transactions, SEA and Sostelia, will allow us to grow. We'll also be seeing growth in the networks business. As you saw, it'll be worth 30 million euros this year, regardless of the WACC reduction in 2025, whereas in 2026 it will be in line with the past. So we will continue to grow organically in that sector. We're doing well in waste, despite some specificities that Orazio will be talking to you about. We'll still be seeing some organic growth in 2026. So as far as structural growth is concerned, we're doing well. We expect to see some positive one-off elements, some reimbursements which we are expecting, which will help us offset some negative elements. Think of the 40 million euro contribution in the networks business for past inflation recognition, and we also have the 87 deliberation, which allows us to recover 5-year costs. So these are some one-off elements that can contribute and which will allow us to partly offset things. And then we'll have a reduction in the last instance markets, generally speaking. So that's the overview of EBITDA. And then, as I was mentioning to Javier earlier, the elements we're seeing both this year and last year in terms of optimization will give us extra benefits this year. And we're still optimizing provisions in a context in which we'll be seeing further normalization, also given the decline in last instance markets. So that is the pre-crisis macro scenario. If we then take a look at the impacts of the crisis currently, as I was saying earlier, on EBITDA, it'll depend on what levels we'll reach and for how long, although we are implementing a number of actions that make us feel pretty confident as far as EBITDA is concerned. We may have to increase provisions, although our unpaid ratios are very low, they're below 1%. And therefore, the impact of provisions is minimal compared to the growth in turnover. And then as far as the impact on net working capital is concerned, as Massimo was saying, on the one hand, we have a good financial flexibility, allowing us to cover that. But we also have a number of tools allowing us to intervene on net working capital. So for the time being, we're not especially concerned. Moving on to cases of force majeure, which is what the gas supply in Qatar stated. As you know, we don't have direct supplies. We buy on PSV, and therefore it is PSV which will have to deal with that. We buy on spot prices with a number of variable formulas. So I think the whole issue will be linked to the overall availability of gas on the European level. And that has a different scope, meaning that if we will have gas, it will be supplied. Otherwise, this will be a problem for everyone. And as far as our contracts are concerned, we also have force majeure clauses when it comes to the supplying of gas. Of course, without gas, there can be no effects from this point of view. As far as competition is concerned, of course, no one thinks that competition is on the decline because we have some newcomers on the market. There has been an increase in the overall Italian churn rate. Ours has also slightly gone up. Although we're in line with what we expected. We're not seeing any specific tensions on the margins. And as you saw, our 2025 results, despite the reduction of the concept margin, and we always talk about temporary opportunities, and you know that we always refer to last instance markets. But we know that we always look at any tenders, and when they're in the money, they're interesting. Whereas everything else is stable, and they tend to compensate one another. STG, things are going well. You yourself could come and be one of our managers. We've seen a growth in prices, and therefore some customers are already moving to the liberalized market to try to hedge themselves from the growth of prices. So this may end up being something useful that we're trying to take advantage of. As far as waste energy plants are concerned, let me give the floor to Orazio. We have seen some benefits in our waste energy plants. The -29 we saw in 2025 is somewhat different. Surely 2026 will be below half that amount, just to give you a rough figure. As you know, we have hedging policies as far as our volumes are concerned. Those volumes had been covered some time ago, and in 2026, we have covered the volumes at around 90%. So those are the sizes we're looking at. And as far as any positive impacts we may expect in 2026, which we haven't said so far, well, that will come from the recycling business. As we saw in the crisis in 2022, whenever we have shocks on the supply chains, thanks to our Aliplast company, we can have local supplies. We can support the industry through stable flows and quality flows at that. So we can support the industrial supply chain. We're currently seeing a hike in the cost of virgin plastics and PET and PE. Virgin PET coming from Asia, and the PE, which we treat and which arrives from the United States. all this is beneficial to us because without the supply of virgin raw materials, many of our customers are turning to us, and the price of recycled plastic, as you know, will grow hand in hand with the price of the virgin raw material. So prices are growing gradually. And also, as far as the recovery business is concerned, we will be launching the rigid plastics model plant. It'll be up and running next year, but this year we'll be starting to see some certain degree of activity on that plant. It is a plant which treats PP, polypropylene, and that too is affected by the difficulties in virgin raw materials reaching Europe, and that too can become an advantage for our secondary raw material, namely our recycled plastic. I hope that answers all of your questions, Emanuele.
Grazie, molto gentile.
Thank you, very kind of you.
La prossima domanda è di
Our
Davide
next
Candela
question
di Banca
is
Intesa San
from
Paolo.
Davide
Prego,
Candela,
Davide.
Banca Intesa San Paolo.
Sì, buonasera, grazie.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the presentation, and thank you for giving us this opportunity. I have three questions for you. The first is on the energy supply business. You mentioned how you see competition on the market.
Corrente dovesse, e se questa dovesse perdurare più avanti nel tempo, diciamo per qualche mese, mi
And
chiedo se
were the situation to continue for the next few months,
nel senso che con prezzi elevati magari ci
have you
potrebbero essere
considered a
maggiori
potential
guasti
evolution of
e
the
se
churn rate?
voi in questo senso
With higher
potete
prices, there may be
dare
a
dei
lower
benefici
churn rate, so
e se
perhaps you may
avete una sorta
benefit
di
from this
sensibilità
situation.
che avete in testa che potete eventualmente condividere.
What is the
La seconda
sensitivity
domanda è
you
sul
have and
vis-à-vis
which you might want to
waste,
share with
tutto
us? Then I
sommato
have a second
considerando
question on the
uno
waste
scenario di
business.
tensione come stiamo vedendo adesso che
Uh,
dura un pochino
With
più
the
nel tempo,
current
volevo
tense
sapere da
scenario,
voi
and were it
un po'
to
di
last
sensibilità
for a
sull'eventuale evoluzione
longer
del
amount
mix,
of time,
nel senso ci ha raccontato l'amministratore
how could
delegato
the
che
mix possibly
il tema
evolve?
del riciclo
The
potrebbe avere
CEO was
beneficio.
saying that you may
Dall'altra parte mi
benefit
chiedo
in
se
terms of the sale
un'eventuale
of
nuova attività
recycled
industriale
raw
possa
material,
effettivamente impattare i
but
volumi.
maybe
Non
lower
credo, però
industrial
considero
activities
questo.
may have an
E
impact on
dall'altra parte sui
volumes. I don't
prezzi
think so, but
eventualmente ci può essere
I'll
un
ask
po' di
you.
pressione al ribasso
And
per
maybe,
parte del trattamento industriale.
perhaps there can also
Infine,
be
l'ultima
a
domanda su il debito
some pressure on
o
prices
meglio
for
generazione di
industrial
cassa.
treatment.
Guardando al
And the third question
2025
on
abbiamo una
debt
cash
and cash
conversion che è,
generation.
diciamo,
For
anche al limite della
2025, we have a
tecnica,
cash
sopra
conversion,
l'80%.
which is above 80%.
Facendo un poco di simulazione sui numeri di piano, siamo
And
magari quello che avete
I was doing
assunto
some
nel
simulations on the business plan numbers.
75%, quindi di
Uh,
fatto nel
you had an
2025
assumption of
siete
70-75%, which means that in
Chiedo se
2025 you
questo
did
sia
somewhat better.
sia stato, diciamo, one-off su quest'anno
Was that
oppure
a
possa essere
one-off
immaginato come ricorrente,
condition
quindi
for this year,
fine
or
piano di
can it be
fatto
recurring,
lasciarvi con più headroom
which means that at the end of the
rispetto a quello
business
che attualmente
plan
vedete?
period, you may have extra headroom compared to what you're currently seeing? Thank you. Well, as far as prices and the churn rate are concerned, it's difficult to see a correlation there. Typically, the higher prices are, the more concerned customers are. And their concern is linked to two elements. You can lose more clients, but you can also gain more clients. And in the past, things tended to compensate each other. Customers don't always have a rational behavior. In 2022, customers were concerned with prices, and they would change their offer. They would leave prices worth 30 euros for gas and 70 euros for electricity, and they chose other offers which were more expensive at the time. So it really depends on how this crisis will evolve. It's difficult to interpret this crisis because prices have gone up a little bit, Currently, prices are slightly above 50 on gas. So yes, they have gone up, but they've gone up compared to December or compared to March. But if we look back at January and February last year, the numbers were the same. So we're still not seeing price levels that can lead to anxiety or concern. So it really depends on how the crisis will evolve, its duration, its intensity. That may have an impact on dynamics. Of course, customers are concerned for the time being. They are especially careful regarding the offers they take, because of course a fixed offer nowadays would mean possible risk in the future, and forwards are higher compared to the past. Whereas if you choose a variable price, that too can be a matter of concern. Therefore, we think that a hybrid offer can be a good solution given the current market context, both in terms of increasing customer loyalty, but also in terms of conquering new customers. So that is the overall situation we're seeing. Moving on to the topic of cash conversion in 2025, but which we also mentioned in the business plan. In 2025, things went better than expected, as Massimo was saying. That's linked to some extra benefits we saw on our net working capital, allowing us to keep a stable debt level. But what we embedded in the business plan, we think is the best possible forecast as far as this is concerned. And maybe Massimo wants to add something. Otherwise, I'll give the floor to Orazio for waste. Well, thank you, Davide, for your question. As far as the waste mix is concerned, as you know, Italy is short as far as capacity is concerned, which means that were there to be a decline in waste, the waste treatment plants abroad would be the first to suffer. So we don't expect to see a decline in waste coming into our plants, which, as you know, are all located in Italy. Then you had a second question on prices. They are stable and high, which is what we saw in 2025. In fact, we saw a slight increase in special waste deriving from urban waste, sector we're present in. These prices are stably high, even with a few extra euros on top. And why is that? Well, again, because Italy is short in terms of capacity, and logistics and transport costs to ship waste abroad are high. Then you have the carbon tax in some Northern European countries, because you know the prices are set in Europe, where most of the treatment capacity actually is. So all that is going up, and those of us who own plants in Italy can only benefit from the situation.
Grazie.
Ingegnere Fabri, non ci sono altre domande?
Mr. Fabri, there are no further questions.
Dovete attivare il
Grazie, scusate. Bene, abbiamo investito quest'ora insieme.
Well then, thank you for spending this hour with us. Thank you for your attention, and we'll see you in May for our Q1 results.